Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're gonna have a look at two vintage fountain pens with flexible nibs and we will compare them with their modern counterparts. Our first contender is this Mabbie Todd Leverless fountain pen made in England in the 1930s. Likely ebonite with nice engraving on the barrel. And on the cap it has one trim ring here, a nice clip that still was preserved quite well. However, I think the top finial is missing or this was replaced during a restoration. Why is this called leverless? Well, it does not have a traditional lever. Instead, it has this knob at the end, and as you turn the knob, there is a metal piece inside that will squeeze the sack as you turn the knob. And as you can see, there is some damage on the back of the pen. And if we unscrew it, we will see a nice 14 karat gold nib and an ebonite feed. This is a fairly small nib, as is the case with most vintage fountain pens. The section has quite a nice ergonomic shape, however the whole pen as well as the section is quite small for modern standards. At the narrowest point the section is only 7.5 millimeters wide and then tapers up to about 9 millimeters. There is also Swan engraving on the section. Let's have a look at how it writes. So this is the Swan, Mabbie Todd, leverless. So it was made likely in 1930s, and this nib is not super soft, but it allows quite a lot of flexing. The line goes from about 0.45 millimeters to I guess about 1.9 millimeters depending on how much you push it, but I wouldn't go past 2 millimeters for sure. The only ink that I will be using today is Lamy Black. I want to eliminate at least one variable from this testing. And the ink flow is fine. Even if you flex, this will run forever basically, or at least until you run out of the ink. When it comes to wetness, it's quite wet, but it's not as wet as some other vintage fountain pens. So this is soft enough for flexible writing. It gives quite a lot of line variation. It has no issues with the flow. I bought this pen at the London Pen Show in 2024 and the price was about 40 British pounds, I believe. So let's call it $60. The second vintage fountain pen for today is this diamond point lever filler in black ebonite. It has a flat top cap with two rings, quite well preserved clip. There is some damage on these cap rings. The other end is also flat. The lever has some give to it. I think the sack should be wider, but maybe the shape of the original sack was different than what's available today. The section is again quite narrow, only 7 millimeters at the narrowest point, then tapers up to about 10 millimeters. And again, we have a small 14 karat gold nib with an ebonite feed. And here is a quick comparison of how the nibs look like. So the Swan is on the right and the diamond point is on the left. and here we can see the feeds. Maybe Todd nib is maybe slightly wider. Both have these heart-shaped breather holes. Let's look at the second writing sample. So this is the diamond point lever filler. And this is likely made somewhere around 1920s. And the line it makes is a little bit, tiny little bit wider on the bottom point, but then it goes all the way to 2 millimeters and sometimes even wider, but I don't feel super confident to push this pen much further than 2 millimeters. In any case, this is a lot softer nib than the Mabbie Todd's nib. And again, we don't see any major flow issues. You can write as much as you want to. This is slightly wetter than the other nib, and the softness makes it a lot easier to use for flex writing. I'm not exactly sure how expensive this was. I bought this from a Reddit user a couple of years ago, and I will link his username down below. As far as I remember and as far as I can see their previous listings, this goes for at least 150 US dollars. So this is a nicely restored pen without any major flaws. I found a similar pen posted a couple months ago for 160, and you will also have to wait and buy one as soon as it's posted because they will sell out in an instant. Ergonomically, this section is even more narrow, and also these ferrules are a little bit sharper, especially on the transition between the section and the body. Let's also quickly go through modern alternatives, and I have done videos on both of these already. The Pilot Custom 912. This has effectively a range of about 0.5 millimeters to 1.5 millimeters. The nib is reasonably soft, however the price is $300 or even more, and it has major flow issues. You have to be quite careful with how much you flex the pen, otherwise it will start to railroad, as you could see here in the P. And the last one is not really a pen itself, but the most important part here is the nib. So this is FPNIBS Bock 250 full flex. And I modified this nib with an overfeed made out of sticky tape. I will link that video down below as well. The range of this pen is about 0.45 millimeters, so this is based on the extra fine nib, and it goes to over 2 millimeters easily. And thanks to the improvised overfeed, it doesn't have any major flow issues. You could see some railroading there, but most of the time it behaves well enough, especially given how flexible the nib is. And the cost for this was just 30 euros, so plus the pen itself. You can use any Bock unit compatible fountain pen. Looking at how capable these pens are in terms of flex, I would rule out Pilot Custom 912 for the most part. It's the most expensive option, and as far as flex writing goes, it's the worst out of these 4 pens. Now for the affordable vintage option, this was well worth the money. However, it's not in the best condition, and I bought it at a pen show where I could test it beforehand. If you are planning to go to one of the London pen shows, then I would for sure consider something like this. You will find a lot of vintage fountain pens in many different price categories there. When it comes to the diamond point, this is my favorite nib out of the 4 pens. The one modern option that is quite affordable would be to modify this Bock 250 nib, especially if you already own a pen with a Bock nib unit. The main issue is that you have to really modify the nib yourself if you want to get this much flex without too much railroading. Now we are left with a couple of big elephants in the room. The first one is size. I already talked about narrow sections, but the pens themselves are quite short. They are both around 128-130 millimeters long when capped. That is significantly shorter than even Pilot 912, which isn't that big of a pen. This of course manifests especially when the pens are uncapped. Both of these vintage pens are about 117 millimeters long, which is significantly less than all of these 3 modern fountain pens. To me at least, they seem generally quite fragile, so I don't even post the caps. Another thing to consider is that for this leverless fountain pen, the knob is quite easy to turn. There is almost no initial resistance, so what can happen is that the knob will turn if you are transporting the pen. Similar story with this lever filler here. So this is easy to press, then it can hang to something and press the sac inside and it will spill ink out. Vintage feeds are also not as reliable in terms of holding the ink inside the reservoir as the modern fountain pens. If you are transporting the pen and it happens to be nib side down and you shake with your back or something, it will start spilling ink inside the cap, and then once you uncap the pen you can get ink on yourself, on your clothes or anywhere else. So traveling with these or even transporting them when inked is really tricky. You have to make sure they are nib up and there is no way they can rotate. All that said, I'm generally happy with these, but I really don't need any additional flexible nib fountain pens, and I'm actually thinking about selling this one, mostly to get some money for a modern steel flex nib with an overfeed. I would also generally advise against buying untested vintage fountain pens on eBay. They can seem like a good deal, but they can be hard to repair as soon as it's something other than simply replacing the sac. And that's all for today. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.